Kimchi, Kefir, Kombucha, Sauerkraut, they've gone from niche health store finds to front and center on supermarket shelves in Seoul, London, New York, and São Paulo. And every wellness account you follow seems convinced they're the answer to basically everything. But here's the question I kept coming back to when I started digging into the research. Is this actually science? Or just really well-marketed health trend? Because there's a difference between something being ancient and something being proven. Humans have been fermenting food for over 10,000 years. That's true. But does eating yogurt or a side of kimchi genuinely change what's happening inside your gut in a measurable way? That's what I wanted to find out. And honestly, what I found surprised me, both in the ways the science supports it and in the places where the hype has quietly outrun the evidence. What's actually happening? Fermentation is where bacteria or yeast break down sugars in food, producing acids and other byproducts. That process does two things that matter. It generates live microorganisms, probiotics, that potentially survive in your digestive tract after you eat. And it changes the nutritional profile of the food itself, breaking down hard-to-digest compounds and increasing the bioavailability of certain nutrients. Some fermented foods even produce new vitamins, not present in the original ingredient. Folate levels, for example, are dramatically higher in fermented milk than fresh milk. At the center of all this is your gut microbiome, the ecosystem of trillions of bacteria and other microbes living in your digestive tract. A decade of research has fundamentally changed how we understand it. It's no longer seen as just a digestive aid. It's now connected to immune function, metabolic health, mental health, and even how your body responds to certain medications. A landmark 2006 paper in Science showed that transplanting the microbiome of obese mice into lean, germ-free mice caused those lean mice to gain significantly more fat, without any change in diet. That study alone made it undeniably clear. The community of microbes in your gut has real systemic consequences. What the clinical evidence shows. The most significant recent trial was published in Cell in 2021 by Stanford researchers. A randomized controlled trial, the gold standard, compared a high fermented food diet against a high fiber diet over 10 weeks. The fermented food group showed a significant increase in microbiome, diversity, and a reduction in 19 distinct inflammatory proteins, including interleukin-6, a key marker of chronic inflammation linked to diabetes, heart disease, and depression. The fiber group didn't show the same reduction. That inflammation finding matters enormously because the WHO estimates that non-communicable diseases driven by chronic inflammation account for 74% of all deaths globally. Yogurt has arguably the strongest individual evidence base. A meta-analysis in the Journal of Nutrition, pulling data from over 600,000 participants, found regular yogurt consumption was associated with a 14% reduction in type 2 diabetes risk. Similar associations appeared across populations in Europe, Asia, and North America, which makes the pattern hard to dismiss. Kefir, which originated in the Caucasus and is now consumed across Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and beyond, has shown real clinical results too. A randomized trial found kefir consumption over 8 weeks significantly improved constipation and stool consistency compared to controls. Another study found its specific bacterial strains could inhibit the growth of harmful pathogens, including H. pylori, which affects roughly half the world's population and is a leading cause of stomach ulcers. And kimchi deserves proper attention. A 2021 study in BMJ Open, analyzing data from over 115,000 Korean adults, found that people eating kimchi regularly, 2 to 3 servings per day, had a significantly lower prevalence of obesity. Researchers attributed this to both the active bacterial cultures and bioactive compounds produced during fermentation. If you're finding this useful, just hit the like button right now. It takes 2 seconds and genuinely helps this reach more people trying to make smarter choices about their health. I appreciate it more than you know. The gut-brain connection. Here's the part most people don't know about. The gut and brain are in constant two-way communication through what scientists call the gut-brain axis, a network involving the vagus nerve, the immune system, and roughly 500 million neurons lining your digestive tract. Your gut literally talks to your brain. Gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters, including roughly 90% of the body's serotonin. A review in Annals of General Psychiatry found consistent associations between microbiome composition and depression and anxiety. Patients with major depressive disorder show lower microbiome diversity and reduced levels of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, strains abundant in fermented foods. A randomized trial from University College Cork found that volunteers who took a multi-species probiotic for 4 weeks showed measurably lower cognitive reactivity to negative mood. Compared to a placebo group, the study was small, so it's not definitive, but the direction of the evidence across multiple disciplines keeps pointing the same way. A diverse microbiome has consequences that go well beyond digestion, where the hype outpaces the science. I said I'd be honest about both sides, so here it is. Not all fermented food claims are equally supported. Kombucha is probably the most overhyped right now. Most of the positive data comes from animal models or cell studies, which don't reliably translate to humans. Some promising findings exist around antioxidant activity, but large-scale human trials are still lacking. The specific health claims on most kombucha bottles are significantly ahead of what peer-reviewed evidence can actually support. There's also the survival problem. For probiotics to have any effect, the live bacteria need to survive your highly acidic stomach and reach the intestine. Research in applied and environmental microbiology found significant variation in survival rates across different strains. Some survive well, others are almost entirely eliminated by gastric acid. The strain matters enormously, and most product labels don't tell you clearly, and fermented foods alone won't fix a poor overall diet. The microbiome is shaped primarily by the diversity and quality of everything you eat: fiber, polyphenols, whole plants. Fermented foods appear to be a genuinely valuable addition to that foundation, but they're not a substitute for it. So, are fermented foods really good for your gut? Based on the evidence, the honest answer is yes, with real nuance. The Stanford trial alone is hard to argue with. The reductions in inflammatory markers, the microbiome diversity increases, the consistent findings on yogurt, kefir, and kimchi across huge populations. The signal is real, but it's not magic. It's microbiology, and it works best when fermented foods are part of a broader diet, built around variety and whole ingredients, not treated as a shortcut around everything else. My practical take? If you're not already eating fermented foods regularly, adding 1 or 2 servings a day, quality yogurt, some kefir, a portion of kimchi or sauerkraut, is one of the lower effort, higher evidence dietary changes you can make. The research genuinely supports it. If you want to go deeper on the gut-brain axis, or how to rebuild your microbiome after antibiotics, those videos are coming, so hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss them. And if this was worth your time, share it with someone who's been curious about this stuff. See you in the next one.